What if I told you that getting your annual physical is a complete waste of time? You think you're doing the right thing, you schedule the appointment, you take time off work, you fast, you go to your doctor feeling like you're doing something good and useful for your health, but you're actually not. Research shows it is worthless at making a difference in your likelihood of getting sick or even of dying. I mean, as a doctor, I have to admit, I used to dread the annual physical, the quick review of your complaints and ordering the same lab tests for everyone, whether needed or not, and then going over the results, talking about how you really need to get the cholesterol down and start a new exercise program. I mean, how many times have you had the same conversations with your doctor about those extra 10 pounds or the need to get your cholesterol down, promising you're going to change your diet completely? Have you ever actually made any changes as a result of your annual checkup? For the majority of my patients, the answer was always no. But this wasn't discussed when I was in medical school. Many people know what they need to do to get healthier, but they're not doing it. But with time and experience, I realized the key to driving real change is to tap into one sense of purpose. What drives you? What do you want your health for? With that clearly identified up front, then the annual physical can be more of a transformative experience, leading to meaningful change that does encourage you to make those lifestyle changes like starting an exercise program or changing your diet. But it took me years to understand that, because in my training, doing the annual physical, I just felt like I wasn't getting to what really mattered to my patients. So I would try and dig deeper, and I would say, okay, so what made you come in today for this checkup? And I would hear, well, my partner made me come in. Or as one patient was upfront enough to say, just to make sure I'm not dying, doc. But I would feel sort of like a fraud because I knew deep down the way I was doing it, I wasn't really impacting whether or not they were going to die. And unfortunately, the impact of the failure of the routine checkup at really preventing disease is being felt nationwide. Do you know last year saw a decline in life expectancy in the United States across all races, a decline attributable to a rise in heart disease, stroke, and other preventable diseases. That means if this trend continues, our children will live shorter lives than we will. Think about that. It's shocking. It's partly due to statistics like this and the rise in other negative health indicators that leading medical groups actually recommend against doing the annual preventive wellness exam for patients without symptoms. But everyone is still doing it because it's how we're taught. So, when I was a medical resident, a doctor in training in New Orleans, I had a patient named Renee, and she made me rethink this annual physical. She came in with high cholesterol, high blood sugar, a good 25 pounds overweight. So I had the same talk with her I had with many of my patients about getting control over blood sugar, exercising, and she would listen politely, nod like she was taking it all in, and then come back the next visit the same weight, or maybe even a little heavier, with the same cholesterol and blood sugar. Finally, after years of these redundant checkups, exasperated, I said, Renee, why do you think you haven't lost any weight? And she said, I hear what you're saying. I need to lose weight for my overall health, but it's just so hard for me, and I think I look okay. And I said, well, Renee, does your weight affect you in any real way in your life? And here's where it all changed for me. She said, actually, I'd love to coach my 8-year-old daughter's soccer team, but I get out of breath so easily, I can't keep up with the girls running up and down the field, and I know it's partly because of my weight. So I said, you know what? From now on, when you come in for your checkups, we're not going to be doing weigh-ins and checking blood sugar. Your checkups are going to be all about checking in on how long you can be active for, to see if these changes we've talked about you making can actually help you be active longer, so you could maybe help coach your team. Since I was a resident, my teachers would ask me, how's her blood pressure, how's her blood sugar? And I would say, we're not checking that. We're just checking how long she could be active for. You can imagine how they felt about that. What do you mean you're not checking it? You need to record her blood pressure in her chart. You need to record her blood cholesterol. I caught hell for it, but it was exhilarating, feeling like I was on the patient's team and letting her control what measures of success we would use. Wouldn't you know, 6 months later, she came in having lost some weight and telling me that yes, she had had enough active energy to coach her daughter's soccer team. And when we did finally recheck her blood tests, her blood sugar and cholesterol were both better. So we both got what we wanted. I knew she had less risk of heart disease and diabetes, and she was engaged with her daughter in a way that really was important to her. This was a huge moment of realization for me. Reframing the checkup around what the patient really cared about, as opposed to around what lab values I was supposed to help make sure get better, was way more powerful. So when I began talking to my patients about what mattered to them, did they have any goals they wanted to achieve that health could either hinder or facilitate, or have some clarity about their sense of purpose, that was exactly the catalyst many people needed to engage in the very behaviors that ultimately would make them healthier. I mean, imagine yourself starting your interaction with your doctor with your overall purpose for being healthy and your goals rather than your chief complaints. You walk away from the visit with a plan rather than just a list of lab results and prescriptions for medications. In fact, purpose is powerful. Research shows identifying a clear sense of purpose lowers your mortality rate. That means your risk of dying in 5 years by 20%. That's on par with quitting smoking or starting an exercise program. And according to Blue Zone's author Dan Buettner, identifying a clear sense of purpose, which is one of those attributes common to the 5 regions around the world where people live longer and healthier than anywhere else on earth, identifying that clear sense of purpose adds 7 years to life expectancy. What would you do with 7 more years of life? Now, I'm not advocating getting rid of an annual check of some sort of health check. I'm just saying it needs to be transformed from a checkup to a check-in. A check-in about how you're doing related to how you want to be doing, not just how you're doing at not dying. What does a check-in look like? Number 1, it starts with purpose. Number 2, we use health as a tool to achieve that purpose, not as the goal in and of itself. And number 3, as your doctor, I can become a resource and a facilitator. I can work as part of a team to support you and hold you accountable to the goals you have set for yourself. We can develop a customized plan for you. What foods should you be eating? Supplements should you be taking? What tests might you need? And what other modalities or practitioners should you see? Do you want to run a 10K? Then let's plan what you need to do to cross the finish line. The good news is this way of changing the conversation to be about a purpose-driven approach to health is catching on. Functional medicine, integrative medicine, lifestyle medicine are all fields that embrace these concepts of shared decision-making and patient-centered care. Medical schools are teaching this approach, and doctors all around the country are flocking to conferences to unlearn the generic complaint-oriented, prescription-writing-oriented checkup. We hear a lot about purpose-driven life, but this is about purpose-driven health. We're used to doctors encouraging patients to hold on to a sense of purpose in order to beat cancer or other serious diagnoses, to stay strong long enough to make it to a child's wedding or for the birth of a grandchild. But as doctors, we don't harness the power of purpose enough when talking to patients about prevention. Yet preventable diseases account for 40% of the causes of death in the United States. It's simply about engaging on the level of what matters to you, not just what's the matter with you. You know, Viktor Frankl quoted Nietzsche in his book, Man's Search for Meaning. He said, "He who has a why to live for can bear almost any how." Now, Frankl was referring to a more dire situation, but his message still applies to our health. In order to make true sustained behavior change, we all need a why. What I've learned is that the trick to getting yourself to do all the things you know you should be doing is to spend some time thinking about your sense of purpose, and ideally sharing that with your doctor. Then you'll transform the annual physical into a powerful tool to lead to a more fulfilled and longer life. Want to add 7 more years to your life? Then ask yourself this one question. What do you want your health for? Thank you.